Welcome back to my channel, Scrappy Friends, and welcome fall. I am here to share a layout that I made with the Simple Stories Forever Fall collection, which I'm loving so much with the addition of that navy and that aqua blue. I did pull out this felt, thinking that I might cut some felt hearts or something. It's not going to make it on the layout because the felt was going to take too much attention away from the rest of the items. I've been wanting to do a folded paper technique that I started seeing sometime around spring. Most of those were using pastel type of colorways. What I saw were simple strips that were folded over, coming down as a cascade down the page. Now, since I always think of falling leaves when I think of fall, I thought that that would be a good pairing, the cascade of papers, sort of simulate the falling of leaves. And then my other idea was to tuck in leaves here and there. The papers in this fall collection are quite rich, and I decided to use the denim paper as a background because I wanted to kind of put my spin on it. Most of the layouts I saw were on a white background, and I like the contrast of all these very luscious papers against that navy. Plus, that paper has the little stitching detail like a pocket on a jean and some splatters. I picked out mostly the small scale patterns because those would work best for the strips. My strips are cut 3 inches in length, all of them, but then they vary in width from 1 inch to 2 inch with some 1 1/4 and 1 1/2 in between. I'm going to go ahead and fast forward all the cutting because you know how to cut strips, right? So here I am with the strips, just briefly going to show you that I used my Martha Stewart scoreboard and this bone folder that I got from bonefolder.com. You can totally use like the lines in your trimmer and an embossing stylus, or just fold them with your fingers. But I just wanted to make sure I didn't get that kind of like a broken edge. I wanted it nice and smooth. Once they were all folded, I brought them over to my machine and I stitched along the open edge. I wasn't concerned about keeping them straight or the same distance from the edge because some of them are going to be tucked under others and you're going to see the stitching out in random places, which is part of the charm of this paper folded design. By the way, what I'm doing here is called chain piecing in the quilting world. That's when you keep feeding the pieces through your machine without stopping to cut the threads in between. And then I went off camera and did that snipping between just to save some time on the video. This is when the play fun time starts. There's so many ways you can arrange these little folded papers. I'm going to call them banners. I wanted to not just have this humongous cascade at the top. Another way I'm putting my own touch on it is I am continuing that cascade through diagonally from the top to the bottom of the photo. I felt that it needed to balance out a bit with some of those banners on the bottom. I'm going to let you know right now that portions of my process aren't going to be on the video. One of the things I did was cut out where I ended up doing some more permanent gluing. Right now I'm using my dot runner. And as soon as you start to shift anything around, you find that if you bump one accidentally, it gets out of place. So I will eventually switch to glue dots. And then I found out that those weren't strong enough to keep it from shifting either. My learning experience is go ahead and use the stronger adhesive like score tape. If you're worried about making a decision and wanting the ability to change things around, use the dot runner, but just be aware that you have to be careful not to accidentally knock things out of place. At this point, you can see that I was pretty sparse with my little banners. I left some spaces in between. My original idea was perhaps to have some of the stickers and chipboard fill those spaces. But as I started placing some elements on there, it did feel just too sparse. And for those of you that are curious, I counted. There are 32 of those little banners on my page. Tucking them in tightly gives it a really nice texture and visual interest, more than having like those sparse blank spaces. But before I did out all of them onto my page, I started pulling out embellishments and title. You can see that my title is in line with the bottom cluster. I thought that would fill the space pretty good at that moment. I was trying to use not only some leaves tucked in here and there, but the feathers. In the end, the feathers feel just too big for tucking in. They're overpowering the banners. Because this design is very heavy on the stacked papers, I wanted to add smaller elements. I turned to the 4x6 sticker pack, which I generally use a few things here and there, but you will see me use some of the circle elements, some of the rectangular elements, which I think a lot of people use in planners. They're going to be added in like that A for autumn above that looks like a banner. You can see the glue dots have come out, and I've started to use them to stick the banners down. I'm also using the leaves inside the cascade of banners as well. But when I place these two here under the title, I really like that effect that they are coming out of the cascade. So I'll eventually remove any leaves that I put within it. I also try to make some little labels work, some other rectangular pieces that had more words, but it was getting kind of messy. This is a fast forward point. During the time I was putting the glue dots on the banners, in the process of putting the glue dots on, things got moved around. I couldn't keep track of how the banners had been placed, and silly me, I forgot to take a photo. But at this step, I decided to do my journaling. This is an ode to my love of autumn or fall. And in California, our autumn comes quite late. I just can't wait to get into comfy, cozy clothes like my mittens there and my cardigan. So I used the word strips as my journaling because it had all sorts of sayings that fit the theme. When I was thinking about the placement of those word strips, I knew I wanted them nestled on the left side of the banners, and it felt that the title needed to bridge across. Here I fast forwarded again because at that point I was changing out the glue dots for score tape, and now they are much more secure. I've added many more of the banners. I've got the placement a little bit better on everything, including nestling elements where I felt that there were blank spots. At the very end, I didn't realize that I hit the record button twice rather than once, and it wasn't actually recording. So as you see the still shots, I will just let you know a few of the little details that I added to the layout. I used the duo of leaves across 3 spots to form a visual line, reinforcing the diagonal design, although my diagonal doesn't extend to the very corner because I feel that that would be too symmetric. I added the smallest circle elements tucked in next to the leaves, the chipboard on top of areas that had high contrast, rectangular elements just tucked in under some of the banners. I used my tiny attacher to staple that little date label, and above I stapled the A for autumn banner. The stitching across the title helps keep it down because it didn't want to lay flat enough on top of the folded papers, and it also echoes the stitching on the random banners. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this process video. If you're a subscriber, thank you so much. If you aren't, please consider subscribing. I will see you here next time.